Liza Thompson had exactly 47 minutes before her night shift started at Bellevue Hospital. 47 minutes to finish mopping the executive floor of the Park Grand Hotel, change out of her cleaning uniform in the staff bathroom, sprint to the subway, and pray the F-train wasn't delayed again. Her grandmother needed her blood pressure medication refilled. Her brothers needed new sneakers before school started. Her mother's rehab program cost $3,000 a month. And Liza needed to survive another day. She didn't notice the man collapse in the hallway until his body hit the marble floor with a sickening thud. "Sir?" Liza dropped her mop, rushing toward the figure sprawled outside the penthouse suite. Expensive suit, Rolex watch, dark hair perfectly styled even in unconscious distress. "Sir, can you hear me?" No pulse. Her nursing training kicked in instantly. She tilted his head back, checked his airway, positioned her hands on his chest. 30 compressions. 2 rescue breaths, 30 more compressions. His lips were cold against hers. She didn't know she was kissing one of the most dangerous men in New York City. She didn't know this moment would change everything. Do-Jun Park opened his eyes to fluorescent hospital lights and the steady beep of machines monitoring his treacherous heart. He was alive. That was unexpected. "Mr. Park, you're awake." A doctor materialized beside his bed, clipboard in hand, expression professionally neutral. "You suffered a cardiac arrest. If that young woman hadn't performed CPR immediately, you wouldn't have made it. Your heart stopped for nearly 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Do-Jun's mind catalogued the implications with the same cold efficiency that had built his empire. 3 minutes without oxygen meant potential brain damage. 3 minutes meant vulnerability. 3 minutes meant someone had seen him weak, helpless, dying. Someone had saved him. "The woman," Do-Jun's voice came out rough, damaged. "Who was she?" "A hotel employee, I believe. She rode in the ambulance, gave us your medical information, then left before we could get her details." The doctor flipped through papers. "Your assistant is outside. He's been handling everything." Min-Soo entered moments after the doctor left, phone already pressed to his ear, coordinating damage control. Do-Jun's second-in-command was efficient, ruthless, and currently failing to hide his concern. "Boss." Min-Soo ended his call, approached the bed with the careful respect of someone addressing a wounded predator. "The entire organization knows about the collapse. I've contained the information, told everyone it was exhaustion, nothing serious, but the families are circling. They smell weakness. Then we remind them why weakness is an illusion." Do-Jun pulled sensors from his chest, ignoring the machine's immediate protest. "How long was I out?" 18 hours. The doctors want to keep you for observation, run more tests. Find her." Min-Soo paused. "Sir, the woman who performed CPR, hotel employee. Find everything, name, address, family, debts, secrets." Do-Jun swung his legs over the bed's edge, steadying himself against a wave of dizziness his pride refused to acknowledge. "I want her file on my desk by morning." "You're going to thank her." Min-Soo's tone suggested he found this notion absurd. Do-Jun smiled without warmth. "I'm going to understand what leverage she might have over me. She saw me die, Min-Soo. That's a dangerous thing to witness." Liza's shift at Bellevue Hospital crawled past, with the agonizing slowness of exhaustion. Her attending physician noticed her distraction, the way she startled at overhead pages, how her hands trembled slightly when checking IV lines. "Thompson, you good?" Dr. Rodriguez asked during a rare quiet moment at the nurses' station. "Fine." Liza forced brightness into her voice, the same false energy she'd perfected over years of working double shifts. "Just tired. You saved a man's life yesterday at your other job. That's not just tired territory." Dr. Rodriguez studied her with the uncomfortable perception of someone who'd worked too many overnight shifts herself. That kind of adrenaline crash hits hard. Take a breather. Liza couldn't afford breathers. She had exactly 4 hours between her hospital shift ending and her hotel shift beginning, time she needed for sleep, checking on her grandmother, making sure her brothers actually went to school instead of hanging around the neighborhood corners, where older boys sold futures for the price of a quick high. Her mother's addiction had taught Liza exactly how fragile survival could be. "I'm fine," she repeated, returning to her patient rounds with the determined focus of someone who couldn't afford to fall apart. Do-Jun left the hospital against medical advice, naturally. His driver brought the Mercedes around to a private exit, and within 20 minutes he was in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, 32 floors of steel and glass that had cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The file Min-Soo delivered was thorough. Eliza Liza Thompson. Age 28. Born in Bronx. Mother, Patricia Thompson, currently in rehabilitation at Serenity Springs Recovery Center. Debt, $47,000 outstanding. Father, unknown. Siblings, Jamal Thompson, 15. Jordan Thompson, 15. Grandmother, Dorothy Thompson, 72. Living in rent-controlled apartment, Bronx. Employment, morning shift cleaning staff, Park Grand Hotel, 6 a.m., 2 p.m. Night shift, registered nurse, Bellevue Hospital ER, 11 p.m., 7 a.m. Student loans, $89,000. Credit card debt, $12,000. Average sleep, 4 hours daily. Education, associate's degree in nursing, Borough of Manhattan Community College. Currently pursuing bachelor's degree, online program, Hunter College. Criminal record, none. Traffic violations, none. Rental history, excellent despite chronic late payments. Notes work 70+ hours weekly. Sends money orders to mother's rehab facility monthly. Grocery shops for grandmother every Sunday. Attends brother's school meetings. No romantic relationships documented. Last vacation, none on record. DeJune read the file 3 times, each pass revealing new details that shouldn't have mattered, but somehow did. She had worked her morning shift at his hotel, saved his life during her brief break, then gone directly to an 8-hour hospital shift without mentioning the incident to anyone. No drama, no attempts to leverage the situation. She'd simply continued surviving. He found that interesting. Set up a meeting, DeJune told Min-soo. Offer her a position. Personal assistant, private nurse. Whatever title makes her accept. Boss, is that wise? Bringing her closer, she put her mouth on mine and restarted my heart with her bare hands. DeJune's tone carried the dangerous softness that made grown men nervous. She's already closer than most people get. I'd rather have her where I can see her than wondering what she knows, what she might say, who she might tell. It was a reasonable justification. It was also a complete lie. The truth was simpler, more complicated. DeJune wanted to understand the woman who'd looked at his dying body and chosen to fight for a stranger's life despite having every reason to walk away. Who worked herself to exhaustion for a family that had given her nothing but obligation? Who had the skill to save him and the strength to leave without asking for anything in return? He told himself it was strategic curiosity. His racing pulse suggested otherwise. Liza received the phone call during her 3-hour sleep window. Miss Thompson, this is Min-soo Kang, Executive Assistant to DeJune Park. Mr. Park would like to meet with you regarding a potential employment opportunity. Would you be available this afternoon at 2 p.m.? Liza sat up in bed, fully awake despite the exhaustion clinging to her bones. The man from the hotel, the one who'd nearly died beneath her hands, wanted to meet. I work at 2 p.m., she said carefully. I have a shift at the hotel. Mr. Park owns the hotel, Miss Thompson. He's authorized your schedule adjustment. The meeting will take place in his private office, executive floor. Please use the penthouse elevator. The call disconnected before Liza could respond. She stared at her phone, unease coiling through her chest. Rich men didn't offer opportunities to cleaning ladies without expecting something in return. She'd seen enough of the world's ugly underbelly to know when something felt wrong, but she also knew desperation. And desperate people didn't have the luxury of refusing potential opportunities, no matter how suspicious they seemed. The penthouse elevator required a special key card. Security escorted Liza through doors she'd only cleaned from the outside, past reception areas decorated with art that cost more than her grandmother's apartment building. DeJune Park's office occupied the corner suite, with floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing Manhattan's skyline like a painting of controlled chaos. The man himself stood beside his desk, alive and healthy and impossibly intimidating, in a tailored black suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. He was more handsome than she remembered, or maybe cardiac arrest had distorted her perception. Either way, Liza found herself noticing details she'd missed during the crisis. The sharp angles of his face, the intensity of his dark eyes, the small, elegant tattoo visible just above his collar on the right side of his neck. A dragon, she realized. Korean style, minimalist but powerful. Miss Thompson. His voice carried a slight roughness, residual damage from the intubation. Thank you for coming. You didn't really give me a choice, Mr. Park. Liza remained near the door, hyper-aware of the power dynamics at play. Your assistant said it was about a job opportunity. Please sit. He gestured toward the leather chairs facing his desk. When she hesitated, something flickered across his expression. Amusement? Respect? Before he added, I don't bite, Miss Thompson, despite what rumors might suggest. Liza sat, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Professional, calm, ignoring the way her heart hammered against her ribs. Do-jun settled into his own chair, studying her with an attention that felt invasive and strangely intimate. "You saved my life 3 days ago. I'd like to thank you properly." "You're welcome. Thank you for the meeting. May I return to work now?" The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. Direct. "I appreciate that." He slid a folder across the desk. "I'm offering you a position. Personal assistant with private nursing responsibilities. Salary of $150,000 annually. Full benefits. Standard business hours Monday through Friday. You'd work directly for me, managing my schedule and ensuring I maintain proper health protocols." Liza's breath caught. $150,000. More than triple her current combined income from both jobs. Enough to pay her mother's rehab in full. Enough to move her grandmother somewhere safer. Enough to actually breathe for the first time in years. Which meant it was too good to be true. "What's the catch?" she asked quietly. "No catch. You have medical training and proved capable under pressure. I need someone who can manage my health concerns while handling executive assistant duties. You need financial stability. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. You don't know anything about my assistant skills. I know you work 70 hours a week across 2 jobs while supporting 4 family members, maintaining excellent performance reviews at both positions, and pursuing a bachelor's degree online. Your organizational skills are evident, Miss Thompson. I'm not concerned about your competence." Liza's stomach dropped. "You investigated me. I investigate everyone who enters my inner circle." Do-jun's tone remained conversational, matter of fact, as if background checks were perfectly reasonable behavior. "It's not personal. It's business. Knowing my family's medical history and financial debts feels pretty damn personal." Anger cut through Liza's exhaustion, sharp and clarifying. She stood, dignity intact despite her worn cleaning uniform. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Park, but I'm not interested in being controlled by someone who thinks money buys people." "Everyone has a price, Miss Thompson." His words were soft, almost gentle. "I'm simply offering to meet yours. My price isn't for sale." Liza moved toward the door, each step requiring more courage than the last. Walking away from financial salvation went against every survival instinct she possessed. But accepting felt like selling something more valuable than money could measure. "Your mother's rehab program costs $3,000 a month. You're 4 months behind on payments. The facility director called you last week about transferring her to a state program, which has a 92% relapse rate compared to Serenity Springs' 30%. Do-jun hadn't moved from his desk, but his voice carried across the space with devastating precision. "Your grandmother needs a hip replacement she can't afford. Your brothers need—" "Stop!" Liza's voice cracked. "Please stop!" Silence filled the office, heavy with implications neither acknowledged. "I'm not trying to hurt you," Do-jun said finally, something almost like regret coloring his words. "I'm trying to help." "Why?" Liza turned back, searching his face for ulterior motives she knew existed but couldn't identify. "Why do you care about some cleaning lady's problems? Because I saved your life. Consider us even. You don't owe me anything. Maybe I want to owe you something." He stood, moving around the desk with fluid grace that suggested danger beneath the business-casual exterior. Stopped 3 feet away, close enough to be intimate, far enough to be respectful. "You put your hands on my chest and breathed life back into my lungs when you could have walked away, when most people would have walked away. I'd like to understand why. Because it was the right thing to do. Because I'm a nurse, and that's my job. Because I don't let people die if I can help it." Liza met his gaze despite the intensity threatening to overwhelm her. "It wasn't about you specifically, Mr. Park. I would have done the same for anyone. But you did it for me." His eyes tracked her face like he was memorizing details, cataloging information. "And now I'd like to return the favor by making your life easier. Is that really so terrible?" "Yes," Liza's instincts screamed. Because accepting meant owing him, meant being in his debt, his control, his orbit, meant risking the independence she'd fought so hard to maintain. But her grandmother's pained movements flashed through her mind, her brother's worn shoes, her mother's trembling hands during last month's visit, begging for another chance at sobriety. What exactly would this job entail? Liza heard herself ask, hating the surrender in her own voice. Do-jun's expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes. Triumph? Satisfaction? Before he answered. Managing my calendar? Attending meetings? Ensuring I eat proper meals, monitoring my health metrics? Accompanying me to business functions? And making certain I don't work myself into another cardiac event? Standard executive assistant responsibilities with medical oversight. And if I disagree with your choices, if you're doing something dangerous, then you tell me, directly, honestly. That's what I'm paying you for, Miss Thompson. Your ability to keep me alive despite my own tendencies toward self-destruction. Liza studied him, this dangerous, wealthy, manipulative man who'd investigated her family and offered her salvation wrapped in a job description. Every logical instinct said to refuse. Every desperate need said to accept. I need to think about it, she managed. Of course. Take 24 hours. He returned to his desk, pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. My private number. Call any time with your decision. Their fingers brushed when Liza accepted the card. Brief contact, barely a touch, but electricity sparked through her nerve endings with startling intensity. Do-jun felt it too. She saw recognition flash across his features before he controlled his expression back to professional neutrality. One more thing, Miss Thompson. His voice stopped her at the door. The job is real, the offer is genuine. Whatever you decide, I won't retaliate or interfere with your current employment. You have my word. Liza nodded once, not trusting her voice, and escaped into the hallway. She didn't believe his promises, but she desperately wanted to. Liza called Do-jun's private number at 11:47 p.m. during her hospital shift's brief lull between traumas. I accept your offer, she said without preamble when he answered on the second ring, but I have conditions. I'm listening. His voice sounded alert despite the late hour, no trace of sleep-roughened confusion. Did the man ever rest? First, I want a written contract specifying my job duties and boundaries. Second, I need 2 weeks to transition from my current positions. Proper notice, not just abandoning my responsibilities. Third, I want to meet with HR independently to confirm this arrangement is legitimate. Liza kept her tone professional, clinical, the same voice she used when delivering difficult diagnoses to patients' families. And fourth, if you ever investigate my family again without permission, I quit. Immediately. No negotiation. Silence stretched between them, punctuated by background noise from his end. Classical music, the clink of ice in a glass. Done, Do-jun said finally. All 4 conditions accepted. Report to HR Monday morning at 8 a.m. They'll have your contract ready for review. Start date is negotiable based on your transition needs. Just like that? You saved my life, Miss Thompson. The least I can do is respect your boundaries while attempting to improve your circumstances. A pause, then quieter. Though I should mention, working for me will be challenging. I'm not an easy man to manage. I once kept a gunshot victim stable for 40 minutes while waiting for a surgical team during a hospital blackout. I think I can handle one workaholic businessman with control issues. His laugh surprised her. Genuine, warm, completely at odds with the cold efficiency she'd witnessed in his office. Fair point. I look forward to working with you, Miss Thompson. Liza, she corrected before she could stop herself. If we're going to work together, you can call me Liza. Liza. The way he said her name felt intimate, like a caress disguised as professional courtesy. Then you should call me Do-jun. Liza ended the call before she could analyze why hearing her name in his accent made her pulse race. 2 weeks later, Liza Thompson officially became Do-jun Park's personal assistant. The transition was simultaneously overwhelming and seamless. HR provided a comprehensive contract that actually protected her rights, shocking for a position that essentially made her responsible for a man's entire existence. Do-jun's previous assistant, an efficient woman named Grace, spent 3 days training Liza on the complex ecosystem of managing a business empire's daily operations. He works too much, Grace confided during a coffee break in the executive kitchen. Doesn't eat unless reminded. Survives on 4 hours of sleep and too much caffeine. The cardiac arrest was inevitable. We all saw it coming. Maybe you'll have better luck making him take care of himself. Why are you leaving? Liza asked, genuinely curious. If you don't mind me asking. I'm getting married, moving to California. But honestly, Grace lowered her voice conspiratorially. Mr. Park has been different since the collapse. More human, present. It's unsettling. 23 months I worked for him, and he never once asked about my personal life. Last week he asked about my fiancée, recommended a restaurant for our anniversary. Whoever you are, Liza, you've already changed something in him. Liza didn't know how to respond to that observation. Her first official day began at 7:30 a.m. in Do-jun's penthouse office. He looked tired, shadows beneath his eyes, tension in his shoulders, jaw tight with whatever stress he'd been managing since dawn. His white shirt had the top 4 buttons undone, displaying the elegant dragon tattoo on his neck and a hint of lean muscle beneath expensive fabric. Liza forced her attention to her tablet instead of his exposed skin. "Good morning," Dojun said, glancing up from his computer. "Coffee. I'm supposed to make sure you drink less coffee, not enable the addiction." Liza settled into the chair Grace had pointed out as hers, positioned at an angle where she could see both Dojun's desk and the main office entrance. "How much have you had already?" "2 cups. Liar. I can see 3 empty mugs from here." His lips twitched. "Welcome to the challenge of managing me, Liza. I'm an excellent liar. Good thing I'm an excellent detective." She stood, collected the mugs with the same efficiency she'd use clearing hospital equipment. "No more caffeine until you've eaten actual food. When was your last meal?" "Last night. Dinner. Around..." He paused, calculating. 9? Maybe 9:30? "It's 7:45 a.m. That's nearly 11 hours. You're hypoglycemic and running on stimulants. Terrible combination for someone recovering from cardiac arrest." Liza pulled out her phone, opened a delivery app. "Preferences, allergies, foods you hate. I'm Korean. I eat everything." But he was smiling now, a genuine expression that transformed his severe features into something dangerously attractive. "Though I appreciate your concern, I'm perfectly capable of feeding myself." "Evidence suggests otherwise." Liza ordered from a nearby restaurant that served healthy breakfast options, added items she knew would appeal to someone with Korean taste preferences: rice porridge, grilled fish, pickled vegetables. "Food arrives in 20 minutes. Until then, you can brief me on today's schedule while drinking water instead of coffee. You're bossy. You're paying me to be bossy." "Medical oversight, remember?" Dojun leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unnerving intensity she was beginning to recognize as his default mode. "You're not intimidated by me at all, are you?" "Should I be?" Liza met his gaze directly, refusing to flinch beneath the weight of his attention. "You're human, Mr. Park. Dojun. You bleed, you break, you need food and sleep and basic health care like everyone else. The expensive suit doesn't change biology. Most people find me difficult to contradict. Most people probably aren't responsible for keeping you alive." Liza pulled up his calendar, began reviewing the day's commitments. "You have 6 meetings scheduled between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. No breaks, no meals, no time to breathe. This is unsustainable. Welcome to my life. Welcome to your new reality where someone actually gives a damn if you survive it." Liza started rescheduling, blocking out time for meals, adding buffer periods between meetings. Your 3 p.m. with the construction company moves to 4. Your 5 p.m. conference call becomes tomorrow morning. Your 7 p.m. drinks with investors gets delegated to Min Soo. "I can't delegate the investor meeting. It's important. You can't be important if you're dead." Liza's tone remained pleasant, professional, absolutely unyielding. 6 meetings, 3 meals, 2 15-minute breaks. Non-negotiable. "That's the deal, Dojun. You hired me to manage your health. This is me managing." The silence stretched long enough that Liza wondered if she'd pushed too far, too fast. Maybe he expected deference instead of direct confrontation. Maybe she'd just argued herself out of the best job opportunity she'd ever had. Then Dojun laughed, that same genuine sound from their late-night phone call, warm and surprised and entirely too appealing. "Okay," he conceded, something like respect warming his expression. "You win this round, but Liza..." "Yes? I'm going to be a terrible patient. Fair warning. Good thing I'm an excellent nurse." She smiled despite herself, feeling the first stirring of something dangerous. Not just professional respect, but genuine liking for this complicated, stubborn, self-destructive man. This is going to be interesting. Dojun's eyes held hers for a moment too long, dark and intent, and carrying implications neither acknowledged. "Yes," he agreed softly. "It certainly is." The first week of working together established their dynamic. Liza fought to make Dojun take care of himself. Dojun fought against anyone managing his existence, and somehow they both ended up compromising more than either expected. She learned his tells, the way he rubbed his left temple when stressed, how his jaw tightened before making difficult decisions, the particular tone his voice took when he was lying about having eaten lunch. He learned hers too, how she twisted her bracelet when anxious, the precise angle of her head that meant she was about to argue, the softness in her eyes when she checked his heart rate and genuinely worried about the numbers. They spent 12 hours a day in close proximity, and with each passing day, Liza found it harder to ignore the magnetic pull of Dojun's presence, which became a problem the morning she walked into his office and found him collapsed across his desk. "Dojun!" Liza's training overrode panic. She checked his pulse, rapid but steady, his breathing, shallow, his temperature, elevated. Not cardiac arrest. Thank God, not another cardiac arrest. Fine, he mumbled, barely conscious. Just tired. You're burning up. When did you last sleep? But she already knew. He'd had video conferences with international partners overnight. She'd seen the calendar blocks marked for 2 a.m., 4 a.m., adjusting to different time zones. Don't remember. Day before. Maybe. 48 hours. The man had worked 48 consecutive hours, and now his body was staging a revolt. Liza made a decision that probably violated several professional boundaries and definitely crossed personal ones. We're going to your apartment. Now. You need sleep and fluids and someone making sure you don't die from your own stupidity. Can't, he protested weakly, even as she maneuvered him upright. Meetings are being cancelled. Minsu can handle today's schedule. She wrapped Dojun's arm around her shoulders, supporting his weight despite their height difference. Move, Park, I'm not asking. He moved, too exhausted to fight, leaning against her with a trust that felt both terrifying and intimate. His penthouse was only 2 floors up, private elevator, the same keycard access that marked everything in his world as exclusive and separate. Liza had never been inside his personal space before. The living room alone was larger than her grandmother's entire apartment. She navigated him to the bedroom, settling him onto a king-sized bed that probably cost more than a car. His eyes were already closing, fever and exhaustion dragging him under. Liza, he murmured, catching her wrist before she could pull away. Thank you. For caring. No one else. Sleep, she interrupted gently, uncomfortable with the vulnerability in his voice. We'll talk when you're not delirious. But his grip tightened fractionally, keeping her close. Stay. Every professional instinct said to leave, to maintain boundaries. To remember this was her boss, her employer, the man who'd investigated her family and offered salvation with strings attached. Every human instinct said he needed someone, and she couldn't walk away from someone who needed her. It wasn't in her nature. I'll stay, Liza promised, settling into the chair beside his bed, until you wake up. Then we're having a serious conversation about work-life balance. Dojun's lips curved slightly, before sleep claimed him completely. Liza sat in the expensive silence of his bedroom, watching his chest rise and fall with steady breathing, and tried very hard not to think about how naturally caring for him had become, or how dangerous that feeling might be. Dojun woke 16 hours later to find Liza asleep in the chair beside his bed, her neck bent at an uncomfortable angle, her hand still loosely holding his wrist, as if checking his pulse, even in sleep. Something in his chest tightened, an unfamiliar sensation that had nothing to do with cardiac dysfunction and everything to do with the woman who'd stayed when she could have left. He'd built an empire on reading people, understanding their motivations, exploiting their weaknesses. But Liza Thompson remained a mystery wrapped in contradiction, simultaneously strong and vulnerable, stubborn and compassionate, wary of his wealth, yet willing to fight for his health. She'd saved his life twice now. Once with CPR, once with sheer force of will dragging him away from self-destruction. Dojun was starting to realize he might be in serious trouble. You're staring, Liza mumbled without opening her eyes. It's creepy. You stayed. He kept his voice low, careful not to disturb the strange intimacy of dawn light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. For 16 hours, according to my phone. Someone had to make sure you didn't stop breathing. She straightened in the chair with a wince, rubbing her neck. How do you feel? Better, thanks to you. Dojun sat up slowly, assessing his body's responses. The fever had broken. His mind felt clear for the first time in days. I'm sorry. For collapsing. For making you worried. For... Stop apologizing and start explaining. Liza fixed him with the same stern expression she probably used on non-compliant patients. 48 hours without sleep, Dojun. That's not ambitious, that's suicidal. What were you thinking? I was thinking the Singapore deal required my immediate attention, that the construction permits wouldn't file themselves, that expansion into... that your business matters more than your life? The question landed like a physical blow. Dojun had no good answer, because the truth was simple and damning. Yes. For 20 years, he'd prioritized empire over existence, success over survival. His father had built Park Industries from nothing, and Dojun had transformed it into something greater. Legitimate business, concealing less legitimate operations, power purchased through calculated risk. But power didn't matter if he was dead. My father used to say that empires are built by men willing to sacrifice everything, Dojun said finally. He worked himself into an early grave proving that philosophy. I swore I'd be different, smarter, stronger. He laughed without humor. Instead, I'm following the same path, just with better medical insurance. Liza was quiet for a long moment, studying him with those perceptive brown eyes that saw too much. What would it take for you to actually value your life, Dojun? Another cardiac arrest? Actual death next time? Is that what you're waiting for? I don't know. The admission felt like weakness, but exhaustion and her steady presence had stripped away his usual defenses. Maybe I don't know how to exist without constant motion, without problems to solve and battles to win. Maybe I'm terrified of who I am when I'm not building something. You're human, Liza said softly. That's who you are. A person who deserves rest and care and moments that aren't about conquest. She stood, stretched, approached his bed with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in medical settings. Let me continuar 0324, check your vitals. Then you're eating breakfast while I schedule a follow-up with your cardiologist. Bossy, he observed, but allowed her to press fingers against his wrist, counting his pulse. Alive, she countered, which is more than you'd be without someone being bossy. Her skin was warm against his. Dojun found himself hyper-aware of the contact, the gentle pressure of her touch, the concentrated expression on her face as she monitored his heartbeat. She stood close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something floral and inexpensive that somehow appealed to him more than any costly perfume. Dangerous territory. Pulse is elevated, Liza murmured, frowning slightly. Are you feeling anxious? Chest pain? No. His voice came out rougher than intended. Just aware. Aware of what? You, he didn't say. Of how close you're standing. Of how your fingers feel against my skin. Of how I haven't wanted someone this badly in years, maybe ever. That I'm fortunate to have someone who cares whether I survive, he said instead, which was both true and utterly insufficient. Liza's eyes met his, and electricity sparked between them. The same charge he'd felt when their fingers brushed weeks ago, magnified by proximity and honesty, and the strange vulnerability of her watching over him while he slept. She stepped back quickly, breaking contact. You're fine. Elevated heart rate is normal after extended sleep. She gestured vaguely toward the door. I'll order breakfast. Liza. She paused in the doorway, back to him, shoulders tense. Thank you, Dojun said quietly, for staying, for caring, for being exactly what I needed even when I didn't know I needed it. It's my job, she replied, but her voice wavered slightly. Making sure you don't die of stupidity is literally my job description. Is that all it is? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to acknowledge. Yes, Liza said finally, that's all it can be. She left before he could argue. The dynamic between them shifted after that morning, subtle changes that neither discussed but both felt constantly. Dojun found himself watching Liza during meetings, noticing details that had nothing to do with professional performance. How she twisted her bracelet when his business partners made borderline racist comments about ethnic communities. The way she bit her lower lip when reviewing contracts, completely focused. The rare, genuine smile that transformed her entire face when his grandmother's health reports showed improvement. He started asking personal questions during their daily briefings. How are your brothers doing in school? Did your mother's counselor mention progress? Is your grandmother's new medication helping her arthritis? Liza answered carefully, maintaining professional distance while clearly appreciating his interest. She asked her own questions, too. About his childhood, his relationship with his traditional Korean mother, the pressure of inheriting an empire built on his father's corpse. They were learning each other, piece by careful piece. The trouble started when Marcus Chen appeared. Marcus was everything Dojun wasn't, warm, easygoing, openly flirtatious, without the dangerous undercurrent of violence. He managed one of Park Industries' legitimate construction divisions and had apparently decided Liza was worth pursuing. Hey, Liza. Marcus approached her desk outside Dojun's office, smile charming and infuriating. There's this new Korean soul fusion restaurant in Brooklyn. Thought maybe you'd want to check it out. Saturday night? Dojun watched through his office's glass walls as Liza hesitated, clearly torn between interest and something else. Jealousy hit him like a second cardiac arrest, sudden, overwhelming, completely irrational. He had no claim on Liza Thompson. She was his employee, not his possession. Her personal life was none of his business. If she wanted to date Marcus Chen, That was her choice. The logical arguments didn't stop fury from coiling hot in his chest. "I'm not sure that's appropriate," Liza said carefully. "Given that we work for the same company, different divisions, no conflict of interest." Marcus leaned against her desk, casual and confident. "Come on, Liza, just dinner. No pressure. I promise I'm not a serial killer." "Most serial killers say that," she replied, but she was smiling. Do-jun found himself opening his office door before conscious thought engaged. "Liza, I need you. Conference call with Singapore in 5 minutes." Both Liza and Marcus turned toward him. Marcus's expression showed mild confusion. The Singapore call wasn't until tomorrow. Liza's showed knowing skepticism, like she could read exactly what he was doing, and found it both annoying and something else. "I'll think about it," she told Marcus, gathering her tablet. "Thank you for asking." She followed Do-jun into his office, closing the door with deliberate care before turning to face him with arms crossed. "There's no Singapore call," she said flatly. "Correct. You interrupted because I can't stand watching another man smile at you. Because the thought of you having dinner with someone else makes me want to commit violence. Because you're mine, and I don't know when that happened, but it's true and terrifying. Because you deserve better than Marcus Chen," Do-jun said instead. "He's mediocre at his job and has dated half the women in his department. You're worth more than being another name on his conquest list." Liza stared at him for a long moment, expression unreadable. "That's not your decision to make. I know. My personal life isn't your concern. I know that too." "Then why—" She stopped, something shifting in her eyes. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of the same dangerous attraction he'd been fighting for weeks. "Do-jun, I'm sorry." He meant it, despite the jealousy still burning beneath his skin. "You're right. It's none of my business. If you want to have dinner with Marcus, you should. But you don't want me to." It wasn't a question. Liza was too perceptive for her own good, or maybe for his. "No," Do-jun admitted quietly. "I don't want you to. But what I want doesn't matter. You're my employee, Liza. There's a power imbalance that makes anything beyond professional relationship inappropriate and potentially exploitative. I won't be that man. I won't use my position to manipulate you into—" "What if I wanted you to?" The words escaped Liza in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for too long. "What if the power imbalance isn't what's stopping me? What if I'm just terrified because I haven't felt this way about anyone in years, and you're the worst possible person to feel it about?" Do-jun couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only process the impossible reality that she felt it too. This magnetic pull, this dangerous attraction, this inexplicable connection. "Liza, don't." She held up a hand, stopping whatever he'd been about to say. "Don't make this more complicated. We both know this can't happen. You're my boss. I need this job. My family needs this job. Getting involved romantically would be disaster for both of us." "You're right," he agreed, even as every instinct screamed to cross the space between them, to touch her, to prove that some things mattered more than logic. "It would be a disaster. So we don't do anything about it. We maintain professional boundaries." "Exactly." Liza nodded firmly, as if they'd settled something instead of just acknowledging the impossible. "Professional boundaries, boss and employee, nothing more." "Nothing more," Do-jun echoed. They both knew they were lying. The text message arrived during Liza's hospital shift 3 weeks later. Mother's rehab called. She left against medical advice. No forwarding information. Liza's hands shook as she read the words again, hoping they'd somehow rearrange into different meaning. But reality remained brutally clear. Her mother had abandoned treatment again, choosing drugs over recovery, addiction over family. $27,000 of treatment down the drain. She barely made it through her shift. Dr. Rodriguez noticed her distraction, sent her home early with concerned instructions to take care of herself. Liza went straight to her grandmother's apartment instead, needing to see her brothers, to confirm they were safe despite their mother's betrayal. Jamal and Jordan sat on the worn couch, gaming controllers forgotten, eyes red from crying they'd deny if asked. "She called," Jordan said quietly. "Said she was sorry. Said she'd pay us back someday." Then she hung up. Liza pulled them both into a hug. 15-year-old boys who tried to act tough but still needed their sister's comfort. "It's okay. We're okay. We have each other." "That's what you always say," Jamal mumbled against her shoulder. "But it's not okay, Liza. Mom keeps choosing drugs, keeps choosing to leave. When does it stop being okay to forgive her?" When indeed. Liza had no answer, except the same exhausted resilience that had carried her through years of her mother's addiction. They'd survive this too. They always did. Her phone rang later that evening, Do-jun's private number. "I heard about your mother," he said without preamble. "Min-soo has contacts in the rehabilitation industry. He learned she left Serenity Springs this afternoon." Of course he knew. Do-jun Park had resources everywhere, information networks that tracked details most people would miss. Liza should feel violated by the surveillance. Instead, she just felt tired. She made her choice, Liza said dully. "I can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." "No, but I can help with the financial fallout. The debt to the rehab facility." "No." Her refusal was sharp, definitive. "Thank you, but no. This isn't your problem, Do-jun. It's mine. My family, my responsibility. You don't have to carry everything alone, Liza." "Yes, I do." She laughed without humor. "That's what I've been doing my entire life. It's what I know. It's who I am, the one who holds everything together while everyone else falls apart." Silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither could say. "I'll see you tomorrow," Liza said finally. "For work. Because that's what we do. We work together professionally and pretend the rest doesn't exist." She ended the call before he could respond. Do-jun showed up at her grandmother's apartment building at midnight. Liza opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, still wearing his business suit, expensive and out of place in the worn surroundings, holding takeout containers from the Korean Seoul fusion restaurant Marcus had mentioned weeks ago. "You hung up on me," he said mildly. "I decided that meant you needed food more than you needed space." "Do-jun, what are you doing here? How did you even—" She stopped, realization dawning. "You know where I live because you investigated me." "Of course. I know where you live because your address is on your employment paperwork. Not everything is surveillance." He lifted the containers slightly. "May I come in, or would you prefer to continue this conversation where your neighbors can hear?" Liza glanced down the hallway. Curtains were definitely twitching behind apartment doors. She stepped aside reluctantly, allowing him entry into the small space she shared with her grandmother and brothers. The apartment was clean but clearly struggling, furniture that had seen better decades, carpet worn thin, air conditioning unit that rattled ominously. Do-jun's suit probably cost more than everything in the living room combined. He didn't comment on the disparity. "Your family?" he asked, glancing around. "Grandmother's asleep. Brothers are at a friend's house overnight. I needed them away from here while I processed everything." Liza accepted the takeout containers, set them on the small kitchen table. "You shouldn't have come. This crosses about 17 professional boundaries. Good thing I've never been particularly concerned with boundaries." Do-jun settled into one of the kitchen chairs like it was his office furniture instead of salvaged second-hand. "Eat. Then you can yell at me for overstepping." The food smelled amazing. Perfectly seasoned galbi, soul food sides, the cultural fusion Marcus had advertised. Liza's stomach growled traitorously. She couldn't remember her last real meal. They ate in silence for several minutes before Do-jun spoke again. "My father was an alcoholic," he said quietly. "Functional enough to build an empire, but every evening ended with a bottle. Sometimes several. He'd come home drunk, angry, looking for someone to blame for whatever business stress he'd accumulated." Liza looked up sharply. "Did he hurt you?" "Occasionally. More often he hurt himself. The alcohol was killing him slowly, while he worked himself to death quickly. I was 16 when he finally collapsed. Heart attack like mine. Except no one was there to save him." Do-jun's expression remained carefully neutral, but pain flickered beneath the surface. "I found him 3 hours later. Cold. Gone. Alone. I'm sorry," Liza whispered. "I tell you this because I understand what it's like to watch someone you love destroy themselves, to feel helpless and angry and exhausted all at once, to wonder when it's acceptable to stop trying to save them." He met her eyes, his gaze intense and honest. "You're allowed to be hurt by your mother's choices, Liza. Allowing yourself to feel that pain doesn't make you weak." Something inside Liza cracked, the careful wall she'd built between grief and function, between what she felt and what she allowed herself to acknowledge. "I'm so tired," she admitted, voice breaking. "I'm so tired of being strong, of holding everything together, of watching people I love choose destruction over fighting for something better. I'm tired of failing." "You haven't failed." Do-jun's voice carried absolute conviction. "You're keeping your brothers safe, supporting your grandmother, building a career despite impossible odds. Your mother's addiction isn't your failure, Liza. It's her illness. You can't cure her through sheer force of will. But I can't stop trying either. How do I do that? How do I just accept that she's gone again?" "I don't know," Do-jun admitted. "I never learned that particular skill. I just buried my pain in work until I nearly died from it. His lips twisted in a self-deprecating smile. Which is why I have an excellent personal assistant forcing me to take care of myself. Liza laughed despite the tears streaming down her face. We're both disasters. Yes, but we're disasters who keep each other alive. He reached across the table, covered her hand with his own. The contact was warm, grounding, exactly what she needed. Let me help, Liza. Please. Not as your boss, just as someone who cares whether you survive this. That crosses all the boundaries we established. Then we'll establish new boundaries. Do-jun's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. I can't watch you carry this alone anymore. I won't. Liza should pull away, should maintain the professional distance that kept her safe from complications and heartbreak, should remember all the reasons why letting Do-jun Park deeper into her life was dangerous. Instead, she turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They stayed up until 3 a.m. talking about everything except work. Childhood memories, favorite foods, dreams abandoned, and dreams still worth chasing. Do-jun told her about growing up between two cultures, never quite fitting anywhere. Liza shared stories about her grandmother's strength, her brother's potential, the future she wanted to build despite her mother's shadow. When exhaustion finally claimed them both, Do-jun settled onto the worn couch despite Liza's protests that he should go home to his expensive penthouse. I'm not leaving you alone tonight, he said simply. We'll figure out what this means tomorrow. Tonight, you just need to know someone's here. Liza woke hours later to early morning light filtering through thin curtains, and Do-jun still asleep on her couch, looking uncomfortable and out of place, and somehow perfectly right. She was in serious trouble. The kind of trouble that started with caring too much and ended with heartbreak. But watching him sleep, seeing this powerful, dangerous man vulnerable in her space, Liza couldn't bring herself to regret crossing the line they'd sworn to maintain. Some boundaries were worth breaking. They didn't discuss that night. Not when Do-jun left that morning to change clothes before work. Not during the following days of maintaining professional appearances. Not when Marcus asked Liza out again and she declined without explanation. But everything had changed. Do-jun touched her more, hand on her lower back, guiding her through doorways, fingers brushing when exchanging documents. Casual contact that spoke of intimacy, neither acknowledged aloud. Liza found herself staying late at the office, long after her official hours ended, just to spend time in his presence. They'd order dinner and work side by side, comfortable silence punctuated by shared jokes and stolen glances. His associates noticed. Min-soo definitely noticed, though he was too professional to comment directly. The whispers started. Speculation about Do-jun Park's unusual attention to his assistant, the way he watched her, the protectiveness in his tone when anyone mentioned her name. It came to a head during a business dinner with potential investors. One of them, a man named Richard Sterling with old money and older prejudices, made a comment about ethnic diversity initiatives while looking directly at Liza. The implication was clear and disgusting. She was decoration, not professional talent. Do-jun's jaw tightened dangerously. Miss Thompson is my personal assistant because she's extraordinarily competent at her job. Her qualifications include an RN license, bachelor's degree in progress, and the unique ability to keep me alive despite my best efforts at self-destruction. Her ethnicity has nothing to do with her position, though I fail to see why it would matter if it did. Of course, Richard backpedaled quickly, recognizing he'd crossed a line. No offense intended. Yet, offense was given. Do-jun's voice carried the particular softness that preceded violence. I think our meeting is concluded. Min-soo will show you out. Richard left quickly, taking his investment opportunities with him. You didn't have to do that, Liza said quietly, once they were alone in the private dining room. That was a significant business deal. That was a racist asshole disrespecting you. Do-jun turned to face her fully, eyes blazing with protective fury. No business deal is worth tolerating that treatment. Not now, not ever. You defended me. I'll always defend you, Liza. That's not negotiable. The words hung between them, heavy with implications that had nothing to do with professional courtesy and everything to do with the feelings neither had admitted aloud. Do-jun, Liza whispered, we can't keep pretending this is just professional. I know. We crossed the line weeks ago. Maybe the moment you showed up at my apartment at midnight. Maybe before that. I know, he repeated, moving closer. I've been fighting this since you put your hands on my chest and brought me back to life. But I'm tired of fighting, Liza. I'm tired of pretending I don't want you, that I don't think about you constantly, that you haven't become the most important person in my world. Liza's breath caught. I could lose everything. My job, my stability, my family's security. You won't. I promise you won't. Do-jun cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheeks with devastating tenderness. Whatever happens between us, your position is protected. Your family is protected. I'll put it in writing, legally binding, if that's what you need to feel safe. That's not the point. The point is, she stopped, overwhelmed by proximity and honesty, and the intensity of his gaze. The point is, I'm terrified of how much I feel for you. Then we'll be terrified together. His forehead rested against hers, their breathing synchronized. Because I feel it too. This impossible, inconvenient, completely irresistible connection, and I'm done pretending it doesn't exist. This is a terrible idea, Liza breathed. Probably. Do-jun's lips curved against her skin. Are you going to stop me anyway? No. He kissed her then, finally, inevitably, with the desperate intensity of weeks of restraint breaking apart. His mouth was warm and demanding, gentle and consuming all at once. Liza's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, drowning in sensation and rightness and the overwhelming feeling of coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Do-jun's eyes were dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked dangerously like love. Tell me this is real, Liza whispered. Tell me this isn't just chemistry or proximity or... he interrupted softly, the Korean words falling like a caress. I love you, Liza. I've been falling in love with you since you refused to be intimidated by me, since you fought for my health when I wouldn't fight for myself, since you showed me that strength comes in forms I never learned to value. He kissed her again, softer this time, achingly tender. This is real. You're real. We're real. Liza kissed him back, pouring every unspoken feeling into the contact. When she pulled away, tears streamed down her face. Happy ones for once. I love you too, she admitted. Probably since you showed up at my apartment with fusion food and understood exactly what I needed. Maybe before that. I don't know when it happened, Do-jun, but it's true. Then we'll figure out the rest together. He wiped her tears gently, expressions soft in a way she'd never seen. No more boundaries, no more pretending. Just us, navigating this complicated, beautiful mess we've created. Together, Liza agreed. And when he kissed her again, surrounded by expensive furniture and the wreckage of a business dinner, abandoned for something more important, Liza finally understood what it meant to be chosen. Not as an employee, not as an obligation, but as a partner, an equal, someone worth defending and cherishing and loving. For the first time in her exhausted, overwhelming life, someone was fighting for her instead of the other way around. It felt like salvation. The new apartment overlooked Central Park from the 20th floor, not quite penthouse level, but close enough that Liza's grandmother stood at the windows with tears of joy streaming down her weathered face. Baby girl, Dorothy whispered. You did it. You actually did it. Liza hugged her grandmother carefully, mindful of the hip that had finally received proper surgical repair thanks to Do-jun's health insurance extension to her family. We did it, Grandma. All of us together. Jamal and Jordan raced through rooms that were actually big enough for teenage boys to have their own space, their excited shouting echoing off walls that didn't carry decades of other people's pain. Do-jun appeared in the doorway, carrying boxes with Min Soo and Grace, who'd flown back from California specifically for the move, his shirt sleeves rolled up and his hair mussed from exertion. He looked happy, healthy, alive in ways that had nothing to do with cardiac function and everything to do with purpose. Everything okay? He asked Liza quietly, coming to stand beside her. Everything's perfect. She leaned into his solid warmth, still marveling at the privilege of touching him freely. Thank you for all of this. Thank you, he corrected, pressing a kiss to her temple, for saving my life in every way that matters. Their relationship had required navigation, HR agreements, public announcements, boundaries established and respected. Liza had insisted on maintaining her nursing license, continuing education, building career independence alongside their romance. Do-jun had supported every choice while learning to value himself beyond his business empire. They'd fought, compromised, grown, and through it all, they'd chosen each other. I love you, Liza murmured. Gashe, Do-jun replied, the Korean endearment that had become their private language. Always. In the apartment that represented new beginnings, surrounded by family that had survived everything, they kissed while sunset painted the sky with promise. Some boundaries were worth crossing. Some risks were worth taking. Some love was worth fighting for. This was all three.